Hi, today we're going to discuss a little bit of FortiManager. FortiManager is a central management device that is going to control not only FortiGates, but mainly FortiGates, but we can also control from a central location and a single pane of glass a lot of devices in our security fabric. FortiManager can also provide FortiGuard updates locally, which are going to be really helpful if we don't want to use our internet consume bandwidth. In some cases, that's going to also incur charges. So we can have one device, FortiManager in this case, go to the cloud, get all the updates, and then those can be distributed locally. Configuring FortiManager is pretty straightforward. If we configure it once at a root FortiGate in our security fabric, and that is going to be propagated to all the other elements in our network. The commands that we see here are kind of the ones that the first two are the important ones. The first one is going to set the type of what we are connecting. So we're just telling the firewall, hey, we're connecting to a FortiManager. And here's the IP or fully qualified name for that connection. We can also set, when we set FortiManager for local updates, we can set either just for updates, set type update, which is going to be the antivirus and the IPS engine, or for rating, which is going to be the web filter, the URL ratings, and the categories that we have in the internet database. This is a snippet of the Fabric connector that we can use when we connect to FortiManager from the GUI. And actually, I will show you that really quickly on the lab. So if we go back to our demo computer, if we go to Security Fabric, one of the Fabric connectors, we're going to have one for FortiManager. Just remember, I'm right now on our root FortiGate, which is the HQ FortiGate. So we just can enable that, put a random IP there, just because I don't have it in this particular setup. It's going to complain that it's not able to connect just because it's a dummy IP. But what I wanted to show you is how the root FortiGate is going to push that information to our fabric. So let me see. Yeah, it took it. So if we go back to branch A, for example, one of our members of our security fabric, and we go to fabric connectors, that information is already there. In this particular case, it's trying to connect. It's not going to work, but that was not the point. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to tell our fabric, hey, this is our central point for connectivity. Back to the slides. We are going to also, I have a second lab where we're going to use for FortiManager and how we can add devices from that location, how we can authorize those, how we can import configuration, how we can push configuration. We're going to leave that for the end after all the slides, because we're going to also demonstrate other things that we can do within FortiManager. A DOMs and B DOMs. What are those? So a DOM is going to be an administrative domain within FortiManager. We can think about this as tenants or maybe organizations. If we want to split our FortiManager logically into different groups, so we can manage devices accordingly. And I can see that with big organizations, and maybe you have a central location, maybe one FortiManager. Well, it will be a cluster, but imagine one FortiManager just for the US region. But then you can split it in 3 different ADOMs, and maybe you can have the East region, and a set of a team for the East region is going to manage that. Then we have a central ADOM with all the devices for the central region, and then for the West as well, something like that. Where BDOMs are going to be virtual domains, and this is going to divide a FortiGate into more firewall instances. So the ADOM is for FortiManager, BDOMs is for FortiGate. ADOM is going to break one single instance or FortiManager into just logical sections versus a BDOM is going to produce a full logical firewall. So we are just kind of like copying our firewall, but obviously by duplicating, it's just going to be a smaller one, but it will be a full-blown FortiGate. We're going to create a ADOM over here. Also, we're going to do that in the lab just very quickly. We're not going to add devices to it, but it will be like just creating a folder, really. That's what we're doing, and we just need to define what's going to be inside that ADOM. So we're going to see that in our lab, but here's another snippet of that process. Finally, we want to understand what FortiGate is doing with all that information. So here we have a few diagnostic commands that we can run. And if we go back to, to our demo computer, I'm going to add this to the course notes, but this is a good article on how FortiManager works internally. So within FortiManager, we're going to have different databases for combine all the policies, all the configuration, and all the objects that is managing. So one of the things that we're going to see very frequently is the device manager database and all the logic that contains there, which is going to be the devices, IP, name, firmware of the devices we are managing, the object database, which is going to have the addresses, not the policies, the addresses, the services, groups, and other user groups as well, and other elements that are going to help us to create our policies. And then the policy object database, which is obviously going to be all the policies that we're going to push through our devices. So read through this. It's going to give you a better understanding of how internally that FortiManager works. And we have also this other document that also mentioned that, but this from the ADOM perspective. So this is another good article that you guys can read up. Back to the slides. With FortiManager, since we already have all the devices in a central location, we can deploy configurations much faster and in a better control environment. So we can push CLI commands directly to many devices the same way that we would do it manually to a CLI of a FortiGate. But for this, we just need to remember that we need to use the full syntax. We cannot use the short version, and obviously tab doesn't work just because it's just a text editor, and then it's going to push that information to the firewalls that we are designating to receive it. Another way that we can do that is using the TLC scripts that we are going to also show on the lab. And this is going to be a more advanced way of program code to push to our FortiGates. The CLI is obviously just we're going to run with the pure raw commands that the CLI offers to us, like the show command, the get command, the config command. But we are limited to that. We cannot do any sort type of programmatic configurations to that. In this example, we can. This one is just going to create a bunch of users in our FortiGate, local users, but you can get the idea. We can define variables. In this case, it's going to be the num user is set to 10. We can later do the right here. Let me see if I can just point that out right here. So in this section, we can just, we're defining a variable which is going to be the value 10. But then we can also do for loops, and this is just, instead of having that block of configuration 10 times with the for loop, it's like, hey, just do it 10 times with using these variables. So the TLC script is going to help us to have that flexibility. I personally have never seen it just to push configuration, really, because we know what we want in our configuration. So either we do it on the policy level or with the CLI script. This is more to gather information. We're going to make a run, maybe logs, and look for some type of key and then just extract that. So we're going to play with this same script a little bit in the lab, but just be aware that it's something that we can do. And this is just talking about the requirements. We can only push TCL script through SSH. We need to start with the pound exclamation mark at the beginning is one of the formatting required for that, but we can check all that in the lab. And finally, what type of wizards are going to commonly see when we interact with FortiManager? The three most important is add device. And it's very similar to when we install any program on a Windows computer. It's just a bunch of questions and next. The add device is going to help us connect to a FortiGate and retrieve information to have it in our inventory. The install wizard is going to help us pushing configuration that we already developed in FortiManager down to the control devices, and the import configuration is to either it's also part of the add device, but we can just later on also use it just to update and bring up all the updated information that we have from FortiManager if someone did changes there locally. And that's what we're going to lab in a moment. And before we jump to the lab, just a few more slides. FortiManager, as we discussed earlier, can be configured to be our local FortiGuard distribution server. So FortiManager will go to the cloud, get all the information from FortiGuard, store it locally so we can distribute that on our network, which is going to be faster, and it can save us also time and money. And these are a few of the configurations that we can do for that. We need to define which versions of FortiGate or we have in our environment and which one we want to, which type of data we are interested to store locally, I should say. When we configure the FortiManager as a local entity, just keep in mind that all the same restrictions that we have with a local firewall is going to apply. We still need to have that internet access, especially to update that FortiGuard.net and support Fortinet.com to retrieve all those ratings and updates that we need. One last command to keep in mind when we have our FortiManager as a local FortiGuard is to the public network status set to disable is just one of the requirements for that configuration. So in conclusion, FortiManager is going to be a single pane of glass, central managed device for multiple elements in our security fabric. The ADOM is going to break the FortiManager in different buckets, while the BDOM is going to create a virtual firewall instance on a FortiGate device. FortiManager can not only push configuration through the install wizard, also we can send configurations to the managed devices through the CLI or the TCL scripts. And FortiManager can also work as a local FortiGuard repository for our security fabric. So let's jump to the lab and start playing with that. Okay, so let's go to the lab environment. I already have a firewall in Azure with a FortiManager in Azure. We're just going to see very quickly how can we integrate them and other neat features that FortiManager has. So just for awareness for what we're going to do in our lab, under policy and firewall policies for this firewall, I only have two very simplistic rules. This one is just allowing everything really, and this deny, don't worry about it. What I care about is that we have this random object 1 and random object 2 as part of my rule. If we go to the addresses, we're going to see we have 4 objects that I manually created, 1, 2, 3, and 4. and this is going to be important later. And finally, if we go under users and user definitions, we don't have any users at the moment. So let's go, I don't remember my FortiManager IP, so I'll grab that. Let's go to Security Fabric, Fabric Connectors, and we're going to enable central management. It's going to be an on-premise FortiManager, and I just need to select the IP. We're going to click OK, and then FortiGate, the firewall is going to register with FortiManager, and now we need to go there and authorize that device. It's telling us that I can immediately launch the website from here if I wanted to, but I already have it, so I'm just going to close, and immediately logs me out because now the firewall is expecting all configurations coming from FortiManager. So let's go to FortiManager under Device Manager Groups, Device and Groups. Someday, there you go. We have unauthorized devices, and this is the firewall we just tell them to come here. So we need to authorize this first, and it's going to give you some of the details, like what's the device name, serial number, the IP address is connecting to make sure we recognize that, the firmware version, and just other small details. So I'm going to authorize this. And in preparation for the lab, I enable the ADOM configuration. As you can see, my root FortiGate, my root FortiManager ADOM is configured with 7.4, but our FortiGate is actually 7.2. So I need to deploy this in a different ADOM that has the correct versioning. So I'm going to use my Azure ADOM, and it's going to be a Fabric ADOM with 7.2. I'm not going to select any policies. We only have one right now. We're going to play with that a little bit. Just going to click OK. So the important part for the exam is that we need to remember the 4 different wizards that we have within FortiManager. We have the add device, the install, the import, and there was something else that I don't remember. I'm blanking. But those are the ones that we need to understand what they do and how can we operate with them without much detail, at least for the test. If you're going for the NSE 5 FortiManager, then is where you want to get in depth to those. So we got that. It's authorized. We don't see it here because we are not in the correct ADOM. We are in the root ADOM. So let me switch to my Azure ADOM. And I don't know if you noticed that. Let me open that one more time. It's going to tell me how many devices we have registered for each ADOM. I don't have anything for root. I don't have anything in my global database, but I do have something in Azure ADOM, so that's why we have one there. We see the device is here. And now that the device has been added to FortiManager, we can start managing and start configuring from here. This is the summary dashboard, just normal information for that firewall. If we go to, I don't know why that's kind of stuck there. Let me try to refresh the page. There we go. All right. Where were we? Yes, devices and group. And I just wanted to go over what we are going to see for a device, in this particular case, a firewall. So for network, we're going to see very similar information as if we were going to manage it directly on the FortiGate, on the firewall. We're going to see our configuration, where are those particular subnets, and we can update those. Same for VPN system, where we're going to type of settings. I hope most people is familiar with this, at least page. Is very, very similar to what we're going to see if we are managing the firewall directly. So FortiManager tries to be very similar and familiar to break down entry barrier. So most of the settings that we want to manage from here are going to be very simple. One thing I do want to modify here is, let me click edit. By default, it's going to come with just a dummy username and password. And because we're going to use, we're going to just run the TCL a script that we saw earlier during with the slides. I need to add the correct username for the gate here. What was the password? Oh, yes. Let's see. Since TCL scripts require SSH connectivity to the device, I need to pass down what's going to be the correct username and password for that connection. If we're running regular CLI scripts, those will run within, they can be transferred within the 40-man layer tunnel towards the firewall. So we could skip that step, but because it's a TLC, we need that. So we have that, and as preparation for the slab as well, I configure a metadata variable is called location ID, and with a default value of 1. But we're going to see the power of this in just a moment by me adding a per device mapping, which I couldn't do before because I didn't have any firewalls on my 40-man layer. So it's going to be this guy, and I'm going to say the value of 5 for that particular device. Its location is 5. And why do we care about this? Oh, I need to add it in next generation of firewall. And that's just for versioning control. So why do we care about that? Well, I'm using this metadata variable in one of my firewall objects. Dun, dun, dun. And where is it? Where is it? Call it, yeah, location 7. So as you can see, my goal is to use this same object over and over again for each location I'm going to deploy within my 40-man area. Instead of having, if I have 10 locations, I don't necessarily need to have 10 objects just to map out simple and common settings for those. That could be OSPF settings, or it could be my object subnet for the LAN side, things like that. So as you can see, each location is going to be, their subnet is going to be 10.location ID /24. And that intelligence comes just from the variable that we just configured. So I'm going to apply that to our firewall, and we're going to see how the 40-man layer will automatically grab that information and dump it when it's deploying our configuration. But before we do that, I need to actually go to policy packages. As we can see, we only have the default policy package, but I actually want to, it's not here, sorry. It's under here, under devices. I want to import the configuration that we currently have because my firewall has some policy rules. It's there, I mean, it's just for testing, yes, but we have something and we don't want to lose that. So we want to retrieve that with the import configuration wizard. We're going to import the policy package. And here is very important. We can say, we can determine we want to import the objects that are being used. Remember, we had the random object 1 and 2, but we are not using random objects 3 and 4. So we can import only the ones that we care that are being used, or we can import all of them. I would recommend you stay with the default configuration. That way, 40-man layer can get rid of those objects that you're not using and make your database, your object database smaller and easier to manage. It's going to do port mapping. You can also standardize this if you have multiple devices, the same frame, I'm not the same frame, with the same model all over the place. And you can say, well, this port 1 is always going to be my outside interface, and port 2 is always going to be my inside interface, to things like that. I didn't do this for this particular environment, so I'm just going to click next. And now it's doing it. It's connecting to the firewall, and it's going to bring all that information. And now here it's telling me, well, I found random object 1 and 2. I'm ignoring 3 and 4 since those are not being used. We have some duplicates that I'm not going to import. And after that, we just confirm the changes and we just wait. Boom, there you go. We have that. So now if we go back to policy and policy package, now we have the package for the firewall, for our firewall. Yes, I could create one from scratch and then deploy that, but I just wanted to show you what's the import wizard is going to do for us. And it's going to come in the same order with the same name, same everything now here from FortiManager. So let's create one more rule, and it's going to be the data field. I don't care too much about the ports. It's just I care about showing you guys what's the metadata is going to do when we use the subnet location subnet object that we had earlier. If this ever does anything, here, there we go. Location, and see here we can also see it is using that metadata field. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to leave it as denied because I don't care about the rule itself. I care about us using this object. So I'm going to click add a new rule with metadata. Oops, data is a metadata field. Okay, and click OK. So we have that. FortiManager will still report that within the policy package as the metadata field, but because we already have a per mapping object, we can now use the install wizard and apply that to our firewall, adding new rules. And just one key here. As you can see, we can install only device settings or both. Policy package, which is obviously going to be the firewall rules, and device settings will be things like interface changes, or what we were seeing earlier was going to be my HTTP or SSH port. And if we do tweaks like that, of course, going to be the color of the GUI, small devices changes, device settings there. So let's apply that. It's going to do its thing. And we see the connection is up, so we should be good to install that. There were no conflicts with the rules that we have. Although we are attempting to install, I should say, and what the database of FortiManager thinks the firewall has. Oh, we fell with errors. Status fail. I think it fell with the save. I'm pretty sure it was able to deploy it. Let's go to the firewall. The firewall is going to complain because we're not supposed to be doing connections here, since it's a FortiManager managed device. And it's telling us, hey, you should go to FortiManager to do your changes, but I still just want to go and see locally what the firewall think it has. Let's go to the policies. Yeah, I was able to deploy it. And now if we see the local subnet was installed on our firewall as a 10.5.0.0, which is what we wanted based on the meta field that we configure as a per device for this firewall with ID 5. And if we go back to addresses, you will see the objects that we are not using, random object 3 and 4, were removed because there's no point of having those objects there, and we don't want to have that clutter in our object database back here at the FortiManager, or even here also on the firewall, since we don't want to create a conflict when we're doing policies locally that we shouldn't, but we could. Finally, let's go under device management, scripts. And I already created the TLC script that we had on the slides to deploy users. So let's there we go. So let's just review it real quickly. We're going to create our function, this do command with this keyword to grab what we're going to pass to each command. And then it's just going to install that and then wait 15 seconds for the ampersand symbol to come back before going to the next line. So what we're doing is we're going to set this variable num users to 10. We're going to come and use our function passing this value, which is a command. Then we're going to go to the for loop to install and create 10 different users based on that name, user plus ID. And then we're going to end our configuration section. So if I just had a typo here or something like that, then I'm invoking the incorrect function and it's just not going to do anything. So we just need to be careful there. And as you can see, it's going to, because it's a TLC script, it's going to be run directly on that FortiGate. It's not going to go through the management tunnel the FortiManager has. Let's click OK. And now let's run that script. We only have one device where we could run. Move it to the right to signify that, hey, go and attempt to run that script on that device. We click run now. And we let it do its thing again. Depending on your FortiManager version, you might need to enable the TCL script on the GUI. But that's very easy to do. It's just 1 or 2 commands under settings. So let's wait for that. There we go. We run successfully. We'll close that. If we go back to our firewall, under user and user definition, we can see that the TCL script successfully ran and was able to create all those 10 users. So bottom line, FortiManager is a very powerful tool. It tries to be as simple as possible, try to mimic what we will see on a firewall so that we are familiar with it and we understand what we're configuring. But understand that we're using the metadata fields, the scripts and other elements can help us managing multiple devices and make our life easier by not creating the same thing like the object, right, for the subnets over and over and over. We can just leverage the intelligence that FortiManager is providing to us to make our lives easier there. Thank you.